Okay, welcome everybody. This is Area Committee 4 meeting this evening. Although it's a remote meeting, we're meeting under the coronavirus rules, so it will be held in the same way as we would be holding a meeting in City Hall, and we'll have the same validity for all decision making. So if we can do introductions first of all for anyone who is looking in. I'm going to go around the screen and introduce the councillors first, or ask them to introduce themselves, and then the officers. So can we start with Margaret, please?
Hi, yeah, my name is Mark Hickman. I'm the councillor for Lawrence Hill.
And Fabian?
I'm Councillor Fabian Beckles, councillor for St George Troopers Hill.
And Steve?
You're on mute, Steve. You're on mute, Steve.
Every time, every single time.
There's always one.
Hi, I'm Councillor Steve Pearce, and I'm one of the councillors for St George Central Ward.
Thank you. And Kai?
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Kai Dodd, councillor for Central Ward.
Thank you. Nicola?
I'm Councillor Nicola Beach. I'm a councillor in St George Central with Steve Pearce.
Thank you. And Mike?
I am Councillor Mike Davis, councillor for Ashley Ward.
Thank you. And I didn't say who I am. I'm Ruth Pickersgill and I'm councillor for Eastern Ward. And my fellow councillor Afsar Shah is going to be a bit late. So could we introduce the officers who are here? So Karina, would you like to start?
Hi, I'm Karina Haskins from Democratic Services. I'm here to take the minutes of the meeting.
Thank you. Keith? You're muted.
My name's Keith Houghton. I'm the manager of the Community Resources team. And so I put together the papers for tonight's meeting.
Thank you. And John? Are you with us, John?
You're on mute.
Sorry, I thought I came temporarily unmuted. My name's John Atkinson. I'm a tree officer for Tree Bristol.
Brilliant, thank you. We also have Tom, but I don't know whether Tom would introduce himself or not, but he's doing the webcasting. Right, we now have Councillor Craig. Would you like to introduce yourself, Councillor Craig? Asha?
Oh, hi everyone. I'm Councillor Asha Craig. I'm the councillor for the ward of St George West.
Okay, right. Thank you, everyone. So let's go through the agenda. So we've done the welcome. Do we have any apologies, Karina?
Apologies from Councillor Jude English.
Okay, thank you. Any declarations of interest from anyone? No. Okay, public forum. We don't have a public forum item. So we go very quickly and swiftly on to the actual meeting. I think the minutes. Oh, we haven't done the minutes. Minutes of the last meeting. Sorry, go back to the minutes of the last meeting, which were what was the date of the minutes of the last meeting? 27th of July. So are there any items of accuracy on that, or are people willing to accept the minutes as a true record of the meeting?
I propose to accept them, Chair.
Anyone second? Yeah. So take that as a second, I'll second it. So we will accept the minutes. I don't think there were any matters arising that we need to pick up in this meeting. There was something in there about including the English names of the trees, and we have got that this time, so thank you, that was helpful. So we'll go on to Keith's report then. Do you want to take us through it, Keith, which is item 6? You're muted. Yeah.
Do you want me to share my screen?
If that's the easiest way for you to do it, yeah.
Okay. Right, is that? No, that's not. I think that's used. That's not it, is it?
We've got those papers. We've got those papers already.
Okay. All right. So you don't need me to share the screen then particularly. I can just talk to the papers.
No, yeah, well, it's fine with me. Is everyone else okay if Keith just talks?
That it might be helpful if Keith is able to share them for viewers.
Right. Okay. Yes, that's true.
Just hang on a sec then. Just let me get them up. Apologies for. All right. Okay, just let me share screen then now with that.
Actually, I've just looked back at the agenda, and the first item was election of chair for the municipal year, but I thought the last meeting was this municipal year. Was it not?
That was the minutes. That was the minutes, Ruth. I got confused as well. I thought, what's this all about? But that's the minutes.
Yeah. Okay, so
It says it on the agenda. Sorry.
okay, so this is the is the paper. Can you see that? And I think I probably need to increase the screen size, don't I? Okay, is that legible?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So
That's great, Keith.
great. So what we're here to do, in my understanding, is I've noted down for you what your current SIL availability is. As you see, it's still recovering from the spend that you you gave last year, the spend that you decided on last autumn. So you're still, there's still a fair way to go before you've got anything significant really. And of the section 106, there are the specific reasons really for this meeting were originally because of the time limits that have fallen out of the spend by limits of these particular two section 106s, 14,500 of which was left in the Nelson Street former Magistrates Court section 106, and 17.127 was left in the new Bridewell Street. So all of the Nelson Street funds are identified for spend in the proposal that John's put together for you. And in this original paper, 8,417.31 of this Bridewell Street have been put forward for spend, leaving 8,709.69. And then subsequently, John came forward with the proposed spend in the supplementary paper, which reduces the amount left in that to 4,000 because he's identified essentially another 4,000 worth of spend that can be, to which this Bridewell funding can be applied. So John's proposal, which perhaps John might be in the best position to talk through, is he's proposing these trees using not just those two section 106s. He's also proposing some other planting decisions using some other section 106s that are still in time, that they don't have the pressure of a time limit on them, but he's brought forward some other tree spends and tree planting proposals using some of those other ones for your decision, partly because he can deliver them basically, and it's an opportunity to introduce some more trees sooner basically. But the key ones is that the Nelson Street spend is fully spent up, providing you're happy with spending some of that in Hotwells and Harbourside, basically. Is that true? No, you're spending all of them. You're spending all of the magistrates in Central, aren't you? Actually, in Area Committee 4, John.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he's of the Bridewell Street. He's proposing to spend some of those in Central, 2 tree plantings in Central, but the rest he's asking whether you would agree to them being spent and being planted in Hotwells and Harbourside, and 2 in Windmill Hill, because he can't find locations within Area Committee 4 to use up those tree spends. And then the others are all to be spent in Central, in Area Committee 4 rather, with the 2 other allocations that he's put forward. Is that a fair description, John?
Yeah, thanks, Keith. It is a bit confusing, and just apologies, these weren't in your first lot in the first section 106 meeting. I will just, for the record, we've got quite a new tree officer working within the team, within the OBS team, Elizabeth Doughty, who some of you might have met. She's covering the Central Area Committee 4 area right up through St George. And she's been working really hard because we all have been out and about trying to find new sites. So these are all brand new. And as soon as we've got them loaded onto our system, we've taken them off for this meeting specifically, so they can't be privately sponsored, because we sometimes find that. I mean, it doesn't really make any difference to us if they're privately sponsored or using section 106. So that's absolutely all the available tree planting locations across Area Committee 4. We've used them all, which is why those handful do go into Hotwells and Harbourside and into Windmill Hill wards.
Okay, thank you. I've got 3 people with their hands up. I'll take those questions first, and then we'll come back with some other things. I don't know what order they came up, so I'm just going to go in the order they appear in participants. So Kai, would you like to go first?
Yeah, thanks for that, Ruth. Can I just ask about the general issue that we were dealing with before, that the money had to be spent within a certain radius of where the development was, and also the fact that quite clearly there would be limited locations for tree planting if that was the case, and that really the only other alternative is to have trees in planters, but the council as a policy or as a rule doesn't consider that a viable option, because I'm a bit concerned that given the amount of development in Central Ward and the amount of budget there's going to be for tree replanting, that we end up in a situation where we're at risk of handing money back to developers by not spending it. So I just wondered if there's been a rethink about the policy of not investing in trees in planters in the central area of Bristol, because I think going forward that might be the only way we can spend the money. So if the issue is maintenance and additional costs, and I think that probably needs to be priced in up front, and we need to review that policy. So I don't know if you've got any comments on that.
Do you like to answer that, John?
Yes, we've been playing catch up with this section 106 for quite a few years now. I think you realise that. So we've been quite successful, really, the last 2 seasons, and this one going back through this backdated stuff. I've made my concerns known. I can't really speak to the policy, but I've made my concerns known to planning colleagues that this is very restrictive for us. It is very restrictive. Not necessarily the timescale, more this 1 mile ambit. And we have got quite a few within Area Committee 4 and other Area Committee areas over the last few years are just the planning condition is just within the vicinity, which obviously gives us a lot more flexibility. If it says in the immediate vicinity, we have to work with guidelines from that. So that has gone back. Whether planning colleagues are going to change that policy or apply for a bit more flexible terms, I don't have an answer yet, but we'll keep pushing from our department. As for trees and planters on the city centre, I personally wouldn't have a problem with that. It does incur greater maintenance. It does make them a bit more vulnerable to vandalism, I suppose. But I guess that's something I'm going to have to take back to my manager and discuss, Kai. And if I can give you a kind of answer around that next week after I've spoken to Richard Enyon, maybe that's the best thing.
Okay, thank you. Asha?
You touched on a number of the points. A number of the points that were raised by Kai have already been touched on. I just wanted to know, because I couldn't see it in the report, what is the equivalent, the financial equivalent of the planting of trees outside of the Area Committee 4 area? So I can have an opportunity to know what percentage or what proportion of that funding is going to another area.
So the cost of a tree planting, Asha, is £765.21 per tree. Okay, so if you look at the yellow sheets, the yellow ones, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 So it's 7 times 765 basically.
It's about £5,000.
It's about £5,000, and then in Windmill Hill, it's in effect about £1,500.
Okay.
Windmill Hill.
And remind me the total budget being spent.
The total amount that that you've got in this Bridewell is 17,000, and this is £8,417 worth of spend.
Okay, well.
So it's quite a high proportion of it being.
It is, and I think the ward councillors directly impacted should get an opportunity to say what they want.
Okay, Fabian, do you want to say something then? We'll work through.
Yeah, obviously I want to be as brief as I can. I'm a little disappointed that nothing's proposed for trees in wider St George area. I know a constituent who I can't give details for GDPR reasons did recently offer to sponsor a tree in the St George area, and that fell through for reasons that weren't massively clear. So there are potentially sites where they in our area where they could have been considered. I mean, if it's spend the money, Hot Wells and Windmill Hill, or lose it, just spend it, get the trees up, you know. But I'm a little disappointed that not everything was thought of regarding this, you know, regarding sort of getting the trees all in the St George area.
So can we just clarify? I think what's been said is there are no more sites available in the whole of Area Committee 4 at the moment.
Yeah, and we already allocated trees in St George and other parts of the Area 4 area in the last meeting.
Yeah. So
this is just what's left.
So my understanding, it is a question of we may lose the money if we don't spend it in the other ward. And
hey, listen, we're one city.
Yes, and we're talking about Brandon Hill and Victoria Park, so they're not huge, long way away, and Anchor Road and things. They're not long way away from us. But anyway, Steve, did you want to comment?
Yeah, thanks, Ruth. These ward boundaries are fairly arbitrary, and but they're not real. They don't mean anything to real citizens. They're invisible lines on the ground. And from a personal standpoint, I'd much rather see trees in the ground than in a spreadsheet. So my recommendation is that we should plant them. The areas that we're talking about planting them in are frequented by people from all areas of the city when we're allowed to move around. So I think all citizens will get benefit from them. And as I say, the ward boundaries are arbitrary lines on the ground that no one can see. So let's just get them planted.
Okay, thank you. Carol, I think you indicated, but I can't see you now. I think you've gone. Carol, yeah.
No, I'm here, trying to press buttons, yeah.
Right, okay.
Thanks, Ruth. Originally, I was just going to make sure that we had Montpellier, the replacement trees on the map, but I see that is there. I just wanted to ask, at the bottom of that chart, it says 3 trees will be planted using sequence of numbers, Newfoundland Road, St Agnes, etc. Is that 3 trees across that area, or is that 3 trees for Newfoundland Road and then something else, more trees for St Agnes? And I'm making a point of it, obviously, because of the stress that we've had with the M32 maples. And so the more trees that we have replaced in and around that area, the better.
Okay, John, can you clarify that? My understanding is that the 3 are the ones in Easton and Lawrence Hill, and then the 6 are the ones that are going into Ashley. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's just different contributions. So we've mopped up all of those in Montpellier that we can. But the Newfoundland Road, the ambit of that contribution went out further in Easton. So we've taken the 2 trees in Easton and the one in Lawrence Hill at the mill house there. And then the other contribution is for Lower Ashley Road. That's the one that addresses the Montpellier Park trees. So that's got nothing to do with the loss of the maples on Lower Ashley Road. There's a separate tree fund.
No, I understand
so,
that.
yeah.
No, yeah, no, I understand that totally.
But yeah,
go ahead.
Sorry, any tree that was available in Montpellier, we did look for and mop up with that contribution. So there's nothing else available. A cleansed surveyed site there. That's not to say there won't be more next year, but we did everything available this year.
And what is the deadline for us to work towards?
I'll have to take Keith's advice on that. The deadline for trees through the Tree Bristol scheme for private sponsors is the end of the year. It's December 31st.
Okay.
But yeah, I guess Keith, you know the timeframes for this year.
Okay. And
in terms of decision making,
yeah,
I suppose we still need to finalize that, but I suppose what we're looking at, given that we're looking at the same pattern of election next year that was intended for this year. So at the moment, my thought is that we are replicating what we were intending to do this year next year. But who knows what the pandemic will do with that timetable.
Okay. But in terms of this decision making, we're having to have the meeting today and make the decisions today, because we might be timed out with this money because it's got a time frame on it with the Section 106, and so we didn't want to lose it, and we were worried we might end up giving it back to the developer. So that's why the timescale for these ones is today. Really today is we won't have another chance to spend against these, will we? Because they'll be timed out.
Yeah, and also because it fits in with the winter planting season that's coming up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, can I ask a couple of quick questions? Then I'm not sure if anyone who's got their hands up wants their hands up. So if you don't want your hands up, put your hand down, or otherwise I'll come back to you. But can I just ask around, there was an email, John, this is a question for John really. There was an email from Mark Ashdown asking about whether or not we could use the final little bit of money that's still left over for 5 more trees, which he said it will cost 3,318, which take up most of that money. And he said hard standing under BTRS, and I've no idea what that means.
So
can you understand that, and can you explain it, please?
Yeah, the BTRS is just the guidelines, the Bristol Tree Replacement Scheme. That's the kind of structure of what we ask for planning when we're getting earmarked tree planting Section 106 funds. So that's what that pertains to.
All right. Can we do that?
I'd quite happily earmark sites, but the thing is, there'll be some trees in those that we agree I can't plant for whatever reason. Last year there were things where there was development going on and I had to come back, and I can't actually draw down these funds until the trees are physically in the ground. I've been through this with Jim Cliff before. So even if we agreed that, there's nothing realistically I can task with engineered tree pits or build outs, because the process, we have to go through a highways QA process, a public consultation. There's a lot of hurdles to get over. So realistically, that wouldn't happen. 95% sure that wouldn't happen for this season anyway. We've started tree planting now, so to go through all those public consultations and highways QA and approval, it's really unrealistic. I can see why Mark would suggest that, because in theory, that kind of earmarks the funds, but it doesn't spend the funds. So it makes no difference to whether a developer would ask for them back or not. And as Keith said before, I've had those conversations with Jim as well, and it's very unlikely the developers do. So I think it's a good idea of Mark's, and it's, but that earmarking just in case type of fund isn't really helpful, because it says we've put something in, and it's, in a sense, it's setting us up to fail, really. Okay. So it's not a bad idea by any stretch, but it won't help for this season.
Okay, so you're pretty confident we won't actually lose the money and we'll be able to use it for next season?
Yes, I mean, there's, as I say, we've, thanks to Elizabeth, as much as anything else, we've managed to spend all of the 2019 run out fund, and this other one was supposed to be spent by July 2020. There's £4,000. We've done really well to knock that down to that point, and I'm sure between now and next year we'll be able to clear the decks of that one. Absolutely certain, you know, that we'll work hard again finding those plots. So we're relying on the developer not coming back and saying, well, you haven't spent that, we want it back. And as I say, from conversations I've had with Jim Cliff, who really knows that procedure the best, he says that's really, really unlikely. It's never happened before.
Right,
So,
that's cool. Thank
yeah.
you. Can I just be very parochial? Fox Park in Easton, I've been banging on about for years in terms of trees. Has anything happened with that? Do you know?
With
The Network
Fox
Rail.
Park?
Yes, the Network Rail bit of land there.
Yeah, you agreed that last meeting, so we've got 12 trees on that patch, I think.
And are they actually planted now?
No, they're not. We haven't got those species on site. We've got a few species on site because of the very, very hot spring. All of our feeder nurseries are delayed, giving us stock. So we should have those trees on the yard of Blaze on the 23rd of November. So I'm hoping to go in this side of Christmas.
Oh, right. Excellent.
But they'll definitely be in the season.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's some exciting news for us then. Right. Nicola, you haven't said anything yet. Would you like to ask a question?
Thanks, Ruth. I just wanted to return to, I guess, having been to the previous meeting and this meeting today, I think I understand some of the constraints and challenges to getting trees planted in the ground, but I think it's just one of those issues that, you know, in my planning brief, citizens just like it I guess it just doesn't feel good enough. Does that make sense? It's not a criticism of the team here at all, but like for us to try and articulate this to citizens in the city, they just think it's mad. Like how can it be this difficult to plant trees in a city that's declared a climate emergency? Like that relationship between nature and ourselves and the fact the money is sat there. And so I guess I'm just trying to return to, without kind of cutting corners, that's not what this is about at all, but kind of quick fixes, I guess, to getting this stuff done. And I'm still struggling to get beyond like the big planters or things that can move around, because it just feels as though it's got to be part of like a blended solution to make sure that we're not really in this situation in future. And so I just wanted to just advocate for that as not the answer, but part of the answer. But I kind of get the impression, and it isn't a criticism again, that officers are not that keen on it. And I just
can I come in as the lead on parks? It's not about officers being keen or not being keen. We're in the middle of developing a new strategy for parks and green spaces across the whole city, which will actually look at how we even commandeer our parks in a different way around food growing, more tree planting, etc. So it has to be done in a context. And so we're making decisions on these trees outside of what will be quite a comprehensive strategy that will take into account planting in, you know, trees and planters and all sorts of things. You know, we're going to be looking at our parks and green spaces through a new lens and listening to what local people have had to say, particularly through the work we've been doing around the deliberative democracy piece of work, and because that's thrown up a number of issues that local people have said that they want to see happening in parks. So I would say it's we're going through a process. We're not there yet, but yeah.
Okay, so Asha, what about, sorry Ruth, just to come back on that, because I think what the point I'm trying to make is what about planting that's not in parks and green spaces? Like, so thinking around sort of some of Kai's point closures and some of the stuff that he's doing in terms of reclaiming the street, so to speak, and I guess.
So I think so. Do you know something? So this is where there is an issue for me about the representative nature of certain networks and forums, because I think what we threw out to the whole city, where do you want to block, you know, in terms of looking at how we address the social distancing. We went out and people have been you know, those who have stood up livable city neighborhoods. And I think that there's a conversation we could actually ask, because there's a lot of groups now that can look at tree planting in their local communities that go beyond who we usually talk to. So I think it's an opportunity for us to maybe ask those communities where they think they would like to see trees, and for us to identify whether or not it can or can't happen, or we want it to happen, and what's the best way to make it happen.
So are we saying then that in terms of this, the new strategic approach to parks and green spaces, that will include looking at things like parklets and things in Liverpool,
it's everything,
livable streets, right? So the place for us to start being creative is there, really. So we can be feeding ideas into that about how we can be more creative with tree planting in roads through that. Yeah, is that what
I think so? Well, we're not touching roads. This is all more about parks and green spaces. What I'm saying is that we could, in relation to this process, we could actually ideas about tree planting in their local communities. That can happen outside of the tree planting process. We're trying to move to a position as a local authority where we're cooperating, we're listening to what people want to say and trying to do as much as we can to address those issues, but obviously within a context of what technically is achievable. But we can give them a voice to enable them to identify, use the map, identify that, do exactly what we've done with the livable neighbourhoods work.
So can I just return, Ruth, to the officers around this issue about innovative ways of planting? That there's no, and I'd just rather have that conversation, because it's, before I kind of go off and try and get my head around this, that I appreciate the enhanced maintenance, and I'm sure there's specific types of trees that fare better in that kind of situation, and I'm sure there's a sweet spot around the size of these things. But I just wanted to double check that there is no kind of in principle concern as part of a blended response to this challenge, that we seriously look at that for future years. Because I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I just get the impression that there's a cooling feeling from the officer community about the use of planters.
Can we get John back on this? Because I'm still not quite clear here about whether things like the parklets, which are the little bits in Liverpool, keep saying Liverpool, livable streets, the little parklets, are they part of the parks strategy, or are they
parks and green streets? Yes.
Or are they highways? Because it's highways doing the changes. I don't quite understand how that overlap works. I don't know whether that's something John.
Parklets. Give me an. So would you say the little road, the little park in Fox Road?
No. When the livable
neighborhoods
streets talk about parklets, they're just talking about little bits in the road that make it more pleasant. So
and so this is where some of this money should be going towards that's
what I'm kind of asking is, but
which includes planters. I think we haven't had a discussion about that, and actually I didn't think that there was an issue with planters, and I think I'd just have a conversation with our head of parks and the parks team, and if there is a policy, we'll reverse it. It's simple.
Okay. I mean, I'm still just trying to establish whether parklets are funded, maybe Kai knows, through the highways, or whether they're funded through parks. That's the question.
The money goes to parks, so even if it's allocated to highways would transfer that over to parks, because we maintain the highways on behalf of.
Okay, I've got everybody's hand up at the moment virtually, so I'm going to have to start going through again. But Mark, I'm going to start with you because you haven't spoken yet.
Who, me?
Yes, please.
Well, I'm not really going to add hugely to this debate, but when I saw Hotwells and Harbourside, it really irritated me, because they used to have so much money in their sill pot. And it used to be, I'm sure it was maybe not true, but they had gold-plated flower baskets in Hotwells and Harbourside. And so for them to have trees from our stash of money just seems completely bonkers. And I still can't quite believe there isn't space in the area that we represent. It just seems preposterous to me. When, you know, it's the inner city, both central Dorrensfield and eastern, let alone St George. It's not very far, and you have that really busy road. I mean, and then give it to Hot Wells and Harbourside, who had so much money. I know that sounds a bit pathetic and petty, but that's what it made me feel. I was really pissed off.
Okay, Fabian is putting messages about needing to finish at 7, but we can only finish at 7 if we get to that point, really. So does anyone want to comment on that? I think the issue is that we have to go with these sites, and we haven't got the sites. So it's about the longer term, trying to identify more sites and getting more places where we can plant, because at the moment.
So can I just
get
make
things
the
to
point?
A decision? Can I just say something? To get things to a decision, shall we just agree this now?
Can I chair the meeting? Sorry, Fabian, I'm trying to chair the meeting, and I'd like to just get to the end of this bit here, and then we can come to a decision, because Mark's raised the issue again about you know, funding outside Area Committee 4, which is part of the decision we've got to make. So we need to resolve that, and we just need to be clear, because my understanding was the decision today is that we don't have any other sites within Area Committee 4. So the risk is, if we say that we want to just do Area Committee 4, because we haven't got any sites, we risk giving the money back to the developer. But if we say to Area Committee 1, you can have this small amount of money, which is about a few £1,000s, then, you know, that money isn't lost. I mean, there's no reason why we couldn't talk to them and say, well, maybe next round you can consider the fact that we've given you some money this round and consider giving us back some money next round. I mean, I don't know whether that might be possible. But John, do you want to just comment on this issue again, just to make it clear what we can do today, really?
Yeah, thanks, Ruth. It's worth noting your area committee and the time we're in at the moment is quite unique in that we are playing catch up with this. So it's all this funding's come. Basically, I took the brief for this over 2 years ago, and this money had been sloshing around for quite some time. So there's been 3 really intense years where we've had a lot of money to spend. That's not going to be the case going forward. It'll be the usual flow of development money. And then we'll be able to react to that. What we've been trying to do over the last 2 to 3 seasons is clear the decks of this, and we've been quite successful in that so far. Taking Fabian's point from earlier, I would definitely push those available plots into St George if I could, but it's this 1 mile ambit that prevents me doing so. So that's why I've had to look at places like Hotwell and Victoria Park. And really, it's just to back up what Steve was saying earlier as well. When we do that, when we've used all the available sites, say on Central, I don't go willy-nilly and just flick off things on the map. What I'll look at is I'll look at popular commuter routes and that are close by. So it's likely people coming in and out of the centre are going to see them. That's why we chose the plots that we did in Hot Wells and Harbourside and Windmill Hill wards, is they're very popular routes that a lot of people will get benefit from, rather than the tree stuck in the middle of Victoria Park, for instance. So I get the frustration as well. I do. I would love to be able to spend it within area committee area, but I just want to emphasize the fact this is unusual. It's a unique situation because of this historic amount of build-up of 106. And hopefully going forward, this won't be a problem. And speaking to Nicola's point as well, just while I'm here, is I've got no prejudice against planters in the city centre at all. Having meetings and going to Arbs Association conferences and things like that, they are quite unpopular because of the maintenance angle, but I get that could be built in. And there's also, I'm working with residents groups all the time across the city about getting trees into their streets where there's no available tree pits, because we have to work within Equalities Act, Disability Discrimination Act around width of access of pavements, etc. So we can look at things like pits and build outs into streets. But again, that's something that's quite low flow because of the nature. It's very, very lengthy consultation process. The service checks are even more in depth than the 9 we do at the moment. We've then got the highways QA, and then we've got to instruct engineering as well. So it is, it's kind of what we've done with this big pot of money so far is look for these quick wins replacement trees and where we can plant them. And this is further down the line. We've got about 1,000 standard trees going in the city this year. Next year, looking, we've tried to extrapolate from private sponsorships in 106. It's going to look more like 300, which gives you an idea of the work streams. If there's a third less of the trees going in, we've got a lot more time to look and work with highways colleagues around those build outs and things like that. Sorry, that was quite lengthy answer.
Okay, so really what we're looking at is trying to just make a pragmatic decision today. There's various things going on in the chat around asking if we can delay the decision or whatever, but my understanding is that we've had to organise this meeting to make the decision today in order that we can not lose this money and not give it back. So I think what we need to do is go through the recommendations and see whether or not we can agree them or we're not agreeing them. But I've got Afsal and Kai and Marg still with their hands up. Are there, Afsal, you haven't spoken yet.
Yeah, so just quickly, so I absolutely agree with the point that Marg has actually made, and the optics of that are really bad because you think about the area, sorry Kai, I know it comes into your ward, but if we're looking at that kind of area near the harbour side and on Anchor Road, those flats, I mean, some of those flats are selling for what, £500,000 million now, and we will absolutely be inundated with complaints from people from inner city areas, not only inner city areas, but some of the other areas as well, because we've made a commitment in terms of increasing our tree canopy, and we don't want people thinking, well, you know, again, it's Anchor Road, it's Harbourside, it's Clifton, it's Sneed Park, it's Stoke Bishop, it's Henleys, it's Westbury-on-Trym. These kind of areas that that you know, traditionally have that infrastructure already. So I am just really mindful about how that will be received.
Okay, so the proposal is just for a couple of trees in Windmill Hill and a few in Brandon Park, I think, is what we're looking at through this proposal. So, right, Kai, are you waiting to speak again?
No, I'm just happy to make a decision now, Ruth. If it's a choice, if there's a choice between this and giving the money back to a developer, then fine. But if we, you know, I see what Ash has put in the chat as well. If we haven't considered planters and there's still time to consider them, then I'd like that to be considered. But if it is a straight choice between losing the money and this proposal, then I'm happy to vote in favour of it.
Okay. At this point, Keith, can I come to you then? At this point, I think that there's a counter proposal, which seems to be to look at whether we can keep it in the area and spend it on planters. But as we haven't had a report to say that or recommend that, I don't know that we can actually, we certainly can't decide that today. So we'd have to have another whole committee and then not agree the money to the other area. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, because there's no, you know, we don't even know whether it's possible to put planters anywhere, let alone locations or anything else.
And because the consultation process takes so long that even if we decided today we want planters, then we're going to be in next year and the next season before we're going to be able to do anything, because you have to consult on them and identify the space and everything else. So I think
your difficulty is to do with the nature of Section 106's defining that 1 mile diameter. That's the problem that Fabian has. Why isn't it being in St. George's? And that's the problem you have, is that because of the 1 mile constraint of these two fundings, the amount of the places where you can plant trees, is this right, John? The places where you can plant trees, there just aren't enough available planting spaces within your patch, within that 1 mile radius of those particular contributions. That's what's held it up so long.
Yes, because we're looking specifically at Section 106 from Nelson Street and New Bridewell Street. So it's got to be within a mile of both of those, which an awful lot of our area isn't. So that's why the recommendation is to go with somewhere that is within a mile, but just is across the border into Area Committee 1. So can we move on to the recommendations? Because I think it's 1:45 now, so we're going to need to do that. So if I take us through the recommendations, the first one was to note the updates on the SIL and Section 106 bend. Are we okay to note that? The second one was to note the SIL and Section 106 money available as of now, and to note the continued risk to the remaining 8,700 of the Bridewell contribution. But if we agree the next one, there isn't 8,000 at risk, is there now? Because we got a supplementary paper.
Yeah.
So the question is to consider the funding that's been suggested and whether we're willing to, let's take the decision first, that presumably we're all happy to make the spend in Area Committee 4 as being proposed in the paper for all of those trees in our wards in, I think there's some in Central, some in Lawrence Hill, some in Eastern, some in Ashley. Are we happy to agree those first? Yeah, yeah, okay. So the final question is, do we want to agree to fund the small amount of money from Bridewell? So I think it was 11 trees out of our area in Area Committee 1 in Windmill Hill and Hotwells and Harbourside, or would we rather risk having to give it back to the developers and try and find some alternative outside the committee that we may not be able to do because we won't have another committee to be able to make the decision? So I'd like to propose that we, my proposal would be that we do agree to all the proposals, because I think pragmatically it is you know, the ward, as Steve said, the ward boundaries are only ward boundaries, and we are talking about the whole city and the tree canopy and everything else. But I'm willing to have anyone else.
And I will second that.
I was just I got there first, I think, Steve, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, do it.
Okay, so we've got a proposal and a seconder that we just go with what's in the paper. Is there anybody like to speak against that?
I'm actually going to speak against it. You know, we heard what was said. You know, find me a local authority anywhere in the country where a developer has somehow decided that they want to rake back a measly £4,000. I really don't think that's going to happen. Yes, okay, we may have to extend the time, but I'm sure that's something that can be, you know, kind of discussed. It's never happened before, so I don't think that is a deal breaker for me personally.
I think it's more than 4,000.
But I also hear what Asal is saying as well. I do hear him, and he's absolutely right.
Right. Just to be clear, I don't think we're talking about the 4,000, because the 4,000's left over anyway.
Yeah.
We're not able to spend the 4,000, so we're talking about the money for a larger amount of money.
Yeah, a larger amount of money in the areas where it's outside of our area. Yeah.
Okay, so do we want to go to a vote, or does anyone not want to say anything at this point? Okay, let's just go to a vote, as we need to get to the end of the meeting. So I've got people with their hands up at the moment. I assume you're not voting. So can anyone put their hands down if they're not voting? I've got 4 people with their hands up in the participants list at the moment.
Okay. I'll take mine down. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. They're coming up. I've got 4 people with their hands up. Marg, Afsal and Kai, you've got your hands up in the participant thing. So I can't see if you're voting.
Mine is down, Ruth.
Right, Marg and yeah. Right.
So do we vote by raising our hands?
Right. So yeah, let's leave the participants now and let's do it. I can see you all on camera. So are you okay, Karina, with that? If we just do it with hands raised? Yeah. So those people in favour of the recommendations as they stand in the paper, can you indicate, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, I think. Okay, there's 4 there. So can those against the proposal as it stands in the paper at the moment? 1, 2, 3. Okay, and is that?
I think I'm going to be against, Ruth.
4. So we've got 4 in favour and 4 against then.
Ruth,
okay.
did you count me in that? Sorry, because I thought I counted Asher, Carol, Kai, Marg and myself.
All right, Karina, can you see? I can't, it's really
Sorry,
difficult.
I don't want to be a pain.
Let's do it again. People in favour, let's try again. And let's say the names then. I think it's me. Anyone who else was in favour of the proposal? Can you, Mike, that's 2.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Steve, 3, Fabian, 4. Is that it? Yeah, okay. Against? Kai, Marg, Nicola, Afsal. And I'm not seeing
Asha.
and Asha,
And
5.
Carol, I think.
And Carol, 6.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So it's we're not agreeing it. Okay. In that case,
Can I make a counter? I think those who are against are obviously, we're prepared to support the spend in the actual area for areas, but clearly not in the area 1 areas that have been identified.
So if it's possible, because I guess the reason why I said against is because I don't think that the money, I don't think the developer will come after the money. I think that's
right.
So it's kind of been weaponized. Not that that's a really emotive thing to say, but I don't think that's a real risk. I think
Yeah.
I actually believe we can. I think we can have our case with it.
Yeah.
Is what I actually think. So I think if we had a credible proposal for the planters, I personally don't have an opposition to it going in a different part of the city, because I understand the 1 mile issue.
Yeah.
But I just think that the fact that it's I don't think that the time limit is a problem. Does that make any sense? And I think that that's one of my.
Can I just suggest, because we can't do anything concrete today because we haven't got a proposal, can I suggest that what it sounds like, what the proposal is that we effectively risk the possibility, although we don't think it's a very big possibility, that this is given back to the developer, and ask that the officers come back to the next meeting that we hold with proposals about how to spend this in a creative way in Area Committee 4. Is that a reasonable?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So can I find out who agrees that then? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think, yeah. So that's carried. So is that okay? Karina and Keith and John, are you clear what the decision is and okay with it?
Can I just articulate it just so that I am clear? So you're approving all of the planting proposals that sit within the AC4 area, and you're not approving any of the planting proposals that don't sit within AC4 area.
Yeah,
correct.
Okay, you're happy to take the risk of the developer potentially coming back for those funds, and the rest is for the future to be determined.
Yes, and I will be meeting. I will be meeting with our head of parks and our operational team to discuss the use of planters going forward in the city and how that money can be spent. And what you also, so there are lots of different types of alternatives. So, I have been talking to the team about a really innovative, like street trees, really innovative, that can be parked on a, kind of a little high street and stuff. So I think we need to explore not just the usual planting of trees, but planters, street trees, and other innovative ideas that can be quickly delivered.
But presumably we can't do anything this season now. So what we'd be looking at is in the new year, another meeting in the new year to agree how we can spend this in Area Committee 4. Would that be the case?
I should think so.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Ruth, I was just going to say, I don't know if you counted my support in that too as well. When you asked us to raise our hands, I think my camera might have been slightly off then.
Right. Which one were you in favour of?
The second one.
Okay. Right. Well, that's the one that got carried anyway. So
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Right. I think that's everything on the agenda. So I think we've made a decision, and hopefully we can come forward with some creative ways to spend that when we next meet. So thank you, everybody, for your time this evening.
Thank you, Ruth.
That will be the end of the
Before you log off, just one thing. There is an organisation, and I'll send everybody the details, that you can, schools can apply for free funding for trees with their own work.
Okay. Well, maybe you can send that round to everybody as an email. Yeah. Okay.